The rain on this early October Saturday evening in Linz fell in a fine, persistent mist, clinging to Anna Gruber's worn coat and chilling her to the bone. Inside the brightly lit Beepaw drugstore, the air was warm and smelled of artificial cherry blossom and cleaning supplies, a stark contrast to the growing cold in her heart. In her stroller, 8-month-old Emil began to fuss, his patience worn thin by a day that had felt impossibly long. Anna rocked the stroller gently with one hand while placing the items on the checkout counter with the other: a large pack of diapers, a single jar of carrot puree, and a small tube of teething gel. It was a pathetic haul, the bare minimum to get them through the next few days. Her job cleaning offices at night paid just enough to keep their tiny apartment in the Frankfurtel, but a sudden repair bill for the water heater had wiped out her meager savings. The cashier, a young woman with tired eyes, scanned the items. "Das macht 7 Euro und 80 Cent," she announced. 17 euros and 80 cents. Anna's stomach clenched. She opened her wallet, her heart pounding a frantic, panicked rhythm. A 10-euro note, a 5, and a chaotic jumble of coins. She had miscalculated. In her exhaustion, she had forgotten the teething gel. She was short by more than 2 euros. The shame was a physical heat that crept up her neck. Behind her, she could hear the impatient sigh of the man in line. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the cashier, her cheeks burning. "I have to put something back. The gel, please." The cashier gave her a look of pity that was almost worse than contempt. As the item was removed, Anna began the humiliating ritual of counting out her coins, her fingers trembling as she separated the cents from the euros. 50, 70, 85. She was still short. She would have to put the baby food back too. In that moment, the weight of her failure as a mother, as a provider, felt absolute and crushing. She was failing her son. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, and she blinked furiously to hold them back. She would not cry in the middle of a beepaw. The man behind her stepped forward. She had been vaguely aware of him, tall, dressed in a simple dark coat that nonetheless hung with the unmistakable quality of expensive tailoring. She braced herself for an annoyed comment, a demand to hurry up. Instead, his hand reached past her, placing a sleek, black credit card on the counter scanner. "I will take care of this," he said. His voice was a low, quiet baritone, devoid of pity, a simple statement of fact. Anna turned to stare at him. He was older, perhaps in his late 40s, with sharp, intelligent features, silvering hair, and the most intense, sorrowful eyes she had ever seen. "No, please, you don't have to," she stammered, mortified. He ignored her protest, his attention fixed on the cashier. "And add 4 more packs of those diapers," he instructed, gesturing to the shelf. "And a case of that formula. And the wipes, the sensitive skin ones." He looked around, his gaze landing on a display of soft toys. "And that stuffed bear." The cashier, wide-eyed, began scanning the additional items, the total on the screen climbing to an astronomical figure. "Sir, I can't let you do this," Anna insisted, her voice trembling. He finally looked at her, and the sadness in his eyes was so profound it stole her breath. "Please," he said, his voice softer now. "Allow me to do this one small thing." It wasn't a request, it was a plea. There was a story there, a deep well of pain she couldn't possibly understand. The transaction was complete in seconds. The cashier, flustered, bagged the mountain of supplies. "Your receipt, Herr Vogel," she said, her voice filled with a new respect. The man, Herr Vogel, took the receipt but left the bags. He gave Anna one last, unreadable look, then turned and walked out of the store, the automatic doors sliding shut behind him, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Anna stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. What just happened? The cashier stared at her, then at the bags. "Well," the young woman said, her voice a mix of awe and envy, "it seems it is your lucky day." But as Anna pushed the stroller, now laden with bags she could never have afforded, out into the rainy Linz night, it didn't feel like luck. It felt like a profound and unsettling mystery. She looked for him, scanning the street, but he was gone, vanished as quickly as he had appeared. Who was this Herr Vogel, and why had he just turned her world upside down? The black Audi A8 glided silently through the wet streets of Linz, its interior a sanctuary of quiet leather and brushed aluminum. Lucas Vogel stared out at the blurred city lights, but he wasn't seeing them. He was seeing the young mother's face, the desperate tremor of her hands as she counted out her last coins. He was seeing the baby, a small, trusting soul oblivious to his mother's struggle. The image had unlocked a part of his heart he had sealed off years ago, a room filled with ghosts and unbearable regret. His driver, a discreet man who had been with him for 15 years, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Back to the hotel, Herr Vogel? Yes, Franz, Lucas murmured. He had come to Linz to oversee the final stages of a major acquisition for his tech company, Vogel Dynamics. It should have been a triumphant trip. Instead, it felt hollow, pointless. What was the point of acquiring another company, of adding another billion to his net worth, when the things that truly mattered had been lost forever? He remembered his wife, Katerina. He remembered her laughter, her passion, her fierce desire for a child. He remembered the years of failed treatments, the crushing cycle of hope and despair. And then, the miracle. Their son, Tobias. He had been born with a weak heart, a fragile flame from the very beginning. The doctors had given him a month, maybe two. They had gotten 6. 6 months of a love so fierce and so terrifying it had consumed them. Lucas had poured his energy into finding a cure, into funding research, into believing he could solve the problem with his intellect and his wealth. He had worked relentlessly, flying to consult with specialists, often leaving Katerina alone to handle the daily, heartbreaking reality of their son's care. He had thought he was fighting for them. She had felt he was running from them. The day Tobias died in her arms, Lucas had been in a boardroom in Zurich, closing a deal he could no longer remember. He had come home to a silent apartment and a note on the kitchen table. Asterisk, I cannot do this anymore, Lucas. The silence is too loud. Asterisk, she had left, and he had let her go, too broken to fight for her, too consumed by a guilt so profound it had become the foundation of his new life. He had built Vogel Dynamics into an empire on that foundation of grief, a fortress of work and solitude. And now, a young woman in a BPA, buying diapers with her last pennies, had breached its walls with a single, desperate glance. He had seen in her the same fierce, protective love that Katerina had had for Tobias. He had seen the struggle he had been too blind to see in his own wife. His act of charity wasn't for her. It was an apology to Katerina, a desperate, futile gesture sent across the void of time and loss. Back in her apartment, Anna unpacked the bags, her hands shaking. The sheer volume of supplies was staggering. Diapers to last for months, premium formula, soft organic wipes, and the plush teddy bear, which Emil immediately grabbed with a happy gurgle. It was a miracle, but it was also a burden. She could not accept this. Her pride, the one thing she had left, would not allow it. She had to find him. The cashier had called him Herr Vogel. A search on her phone for Vogel Linz brought up thousands of results. But a search for Vogel Dynamics brought up one man. Lucas Vogel, the reclusive founder and CEO of one of Europe's most successful software companies. The headquarters, she discovered, were in the newly renovated Tabak Fabrik, the old tobacco factory that had been transformed into a trendy hub for tech and arts. A plan began to form in her mind, a plan born of desperation and a fierce need to reclaim her own agency. The next Monday, with a meal in the care of a neighbor, she went to the Tabak Fabrik. The sprawling complex was a world away from her own, a place of creative energy and ambitious young people. Finding the main office of Vogel Dynamics was easy. Getting inside was not. The receptionist was polite but firm. Mr. Vogel did not take unscheduled appointments. Anna pleaded, trying to explain the situation without revealing the humiliating details. She was met with a wall of professional indifference. Dejected, she was about to leave when she had an idea. She went to a nearby shop and bought a simple gift bag. Inside, she placed the soft teddy bear he had bought, along with a handwritten note. Asterisk Herr Vogel, thank you for your kindness, but I cannot accept it. My dignity is not for sale, but I see now that yours is not either. I only wish to thank you in person and arrange a way to repay you. Please, Anna Gruber. Asterisk, she left the package with the receptionist, having no idea if it would ever reach him. But as she walked away, she felt a sliver of her own power return. She had not been a passive recipient of charity. She had acted. She had spoken. She had been seen. 2 days passed with no response. Anna began to lose hope, convinced her note had been tossed aside, her gesture dismissed. She was preparing Emil's dinner on Wednesday evening when her phone rang with an unknown number. Anna Gruber, a crisp, professional voice asked. Yes, this is Helena Schmidt, assistant to Lucas Vogel. Mr. Vogel has received your package. He has asked if you would be available to meet with him tomorrow at 10 a.m. at his office. Anna's heart leaped. Yes, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, I am available. The next morning, she stood once again in the lobby of Vogel Dynamics, but this time, she was escorted to the top floor. Lucas Vogel's office was a masterpiece of minimalist design, a space of concrete, glass, and breathtaking views of Linz and the Danube. He was not behind his desk, but was standing by the window, holding the small teddy bear in his hand. He turned as she entered, and his eyes, though still filled with a deep sadness, held a flicker of something else, curiosity, and perhaps respect. Ms. Gruber, he said, his voice a low rumble. You are a very determined woman. I had to thank you, she said, clutching her purse. And I need to repay you. I've worked out a payment plan. It will take me years, but he held up a hand, silencing her. I will not accept your money, but perhaps you can repay me in another way. He walked over to his desk, where a set of blueprints was spread out. My company is developing a new app for a charitable foundation. It's a platform to connect volunteers with families in need. The user interface is uninspired. It lacks heart. He looked at her, his gaze intense. The receptionist forwarded me your employment history. You were a graphic designer before your son was born. Anna was stunned. Yes, but I haven't worked in the field for over 2 years. My portfolio is... Talent does not expire, Ms. Gruber, he interrupted. I am offering you a freelance contract. Redesign the interface. Give it the heart that it's missing. Your first payment will more than cover the cost of the items I purchased for you. We will be even, and you will have a current project for your portfolio. It was a perfect solution, an offer that respected her skills and preserved her dignity. It was a lifeline disguised as a business transaction. Why? She asked, the same question that had haunted her since that night in the store. He looked over at the teddy bear, still on his desk. Because you reminded me that kindness is not about writing a check. It's about seeing a need and meeting it. You have a skill I need, and I have an opportunity you need. It seems, Ms. Gruber, that we can help each other. Anna looked at this powerful, complex man who was offering her not charity, but a chance. A chance to rebuild her life, to reclaim her career, to be more than just a struggling single mother. For the first time in a very long time, she felt a genuine, unburdened flicker of hope. Okay, Herr Vogel, she said, a small, determined smile on her face. You have a deal. Over the next few months, a new routine settled into Anna's life, one that was blessedly free of the constant, grinding anxiety about money. The freelance contract was generous, and the work was invigorating. She had forgotten how much she loved to create, to solve visual problems, to bring ideas to life. She worked from home, allowing her to be with Emil, and she poured all of her talent and gratitude into the project. The results were stunning. She transformed the cold, corporate app into a warm, intuitive, and beautiful platform. Lucas was impressed, not just with her work, but with her. They had weekly check-in meetings at his office, which slowly evolved from formal project reviews into something more personal. He would ask about Emil, and his face would soften when she showed him pictures. She learned about his company, about the relentless pressure he was under, and she saw the profound loneliness that surrounded him. He was a man who commanded thousands of employees but had no one to talk to at the end of the day. One afternoon, he asked her to join him for a walk along the Danube. It was a crisp, clear day, and the sun sparkled on the water. They walked in a comfortable silence for a while before he turned to her. The app is ready to launch, he said. It's a masterpiece, Anna. Better than I could have imagined. Thank you, she said, her cheeks flushing with pleasure. I loved working on it. I don't want it to end, he admitted, his voice quiet. Our meetings, our conversations. I don't want you to disappear from my life. Anna's heart began to beat faster. She had been feeling the same way, a growing affection for this sad, kind, brilliant man, but she had dismissed it as gratitude, as an impossible fantasy. Lucas, she began, not sure what to say. He stopped walking and turned to face her, taking her hands in his. When my son died, he said, his voice thick with emotion, the world lost its color. For years, I have been living in grayscale. But you and Emil, you've brought the color back. You've shown me what it feels like to hope again." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a raw, terrifying vulnerability. "I know this is insane. I am your employer. You are a young mother with a complicated life. But I am falling in love with you, Anna Gruber. And it is the most real and terrifying and wonderful thing I have felt in a decade." The confession hung in the air between them, as bright and fragile as the autumn sunlight. She looked at him, at the man who had seen her at her absolute lowest and had not looked away. He hadn't just saved her from poverty. He had seen her, truly seen her, and given her a chance to save herself. And in doing so, he had saved himself. She had fallen in love with him too, not with the billionaire CEO, but with the man who remembered his son's laugh, the man who listened with his whole heart, the man who had bought a teddy bear for a stranger's child. "I'm terrified too," she whispered, her hands gripping his tightly. "But I think I'm falling in love with you too, Lucas Vogel." He smiled, a real, radiant smile that transformed his face, erasing the years of sorrow. He leaned in and kissed her, a gentle, hesitant kiss that tasted of second chances and the promise of a new beginning. It was a kiss that sealed the end of their contract and the start of something infinitely more precious. A year later, on a bright Saturday afternoon, Lucas, Anna, and a now toddling Emil walked hand in hand through the Linz Hauptplatz. The city was bustling, alive with music and laughter from a local festival. They were a family, an improbable, beautiful family forged in a moment of despair and compassion. Anna was no longer a freelance contractor. She was the head of the new in-house design department at Vogel Dynamics, a position he had created for her. She was a respected leader, a thriving artist, a confident and happy mother. Lucas had delegated more of his CEO duties, making time for what he now knew was truly important. He was learning to live again, to laugh, to be present. As they stopped to buy roasted almonds, Emil pointed excitedly at a carousel. Lucas's eyes met Anna's over their son's head, a shared look of love and understanding passing between them. He remembered that rainy night in the BPA, the desperate mother and the lonely man. It felt like another lifetime. That single, impulsive act of kindness had not been an apology for his past, he realized. It had been an investment in his future. A future he never would have found if he hadn't stopped to listen to the quiet, heartbreaking plea of a stranger. He had paid for her diapers, and in return, she and her son had given him back his soul.